The quiet tap of bare feet on polished mats filled the dojo like the whisper of breath. Golden light filtered through tall windows, drawing long slats of afternoon sun across the floor. The students moved in rhythm, exhaling sharp ki on cue, each count led by Sensei McCann. All but one. Lena moved with a different kind of precision. 14. Small. Composed. Her kata wasn't flashy or fast. It was thoughtful, like she was reciting something she didn't memorize, but remembered. Her transitions were clean, grounded. Her strikes didn't just hit, they punctuated, like ending each thought with a period. A boy toward the back stumbled mid-form. "Whoa," he muttered loud enough to carry. Another voice chimed in, half laughing. "Where'd she learn that?" Then another, teasing. "New girls got secret training." Lena didn't react. She exhaled slowly, finished the last movement, then stepped into line. "Lena." Sensei McCann's voice cut clean through the room. She blinked. "Yes, Sensei." Front and center. She stepped forward. McCann, tall, narrow, his posture tight like a coiled spring, watched her closely. "Where did you learn that sequence?" "That's not our curriculum." She hesitated. Just long enough for the room to still. "My grandfather," she answered. "Your grandfather?" "Yes. He trained me before I joined." McCann's tone hardened. "He have a name?" She nodded. "Chuck Norris." The room froze. Then it broke. "Wait, Chuck Norris? No way. Bro, is she serious? The meme guy? She watches too much YouTube." Lena said nothing. McCann didn't smile. "Enough," he snapped, and the chatter stopped, but smirks still lingered. He looked back to her. "You're saying Chuck Norris is your grandfather?" "Yes," Lena replied, quiet but unwavering. His eyes didn't blink. "You think this is funny?" She stood silent. "You believe claiming someone else's fame makes you honorable?" "I wasn't trying." "You've disrespected this class and our practice," he interrupted. "You will apologize. Now." She looked to the rows of classmates, some amused, some indifferent, a few confused. She stood straighter. "I didn't lie." Louder. "I didn't lie." And then it happened. The sound cracked through the room like a rifle shot. His hand, open. Her cheek, red. The silence that followed felt carved out of stone. Even the dust and the sunlight seemed to freeze. No one moved. Not even her. Lena stood still, head slightly turned, eyes wide but dry. Her cheek flushed a deep red, but she didn't cry. Her fists tightened until her knuckles turned pale. She said nothing. No one did. It was the kind of silence that felt like glass, fragile, cutting, and dangerous. "Back in line," McCann said softly. She nodded once. Walked back to her place. Each step echoed too loud. No one met her eyes. The class resumed. Or pretended to. But something had shifted. The summer sun still shone brightly when Lena unlocked her bike and pedaled away from the gym. Her duffel bag bounced lightly at her side. The pavement radiated heat through the soles of her shoes, clinging to her skin like static. There was no music in her ears. No wind in her hair. Just the hum of tires and the pressure in her chest that refused to ease. Chuck Norris. Seriously? She's lying. Trying to be special. The words looped in her head, dull and persistent. Her hands gripped the handlebars too tightly. Her face still burned, but not from the slap. That sting had passed. What stayed was the weight. The way no one spoke. The way no one looked at her after. As if she didn't exist. Or worse, as if she wasn't worth noticing. She reached the small gate at the front of her grandfather's yard and stopped. The bike leaned against the grass. She didn't move right away. The house was quiet. Sunlight glinted off the window panes. Sprinklers clicked in slow arcs. Cicadas buzzed in the trees like static. Chuck Norris stood in the flower bed, watering the marigolds. He didn't look up right away. "You're home early," he said. She didn't answer. Then he turned. Saw the red mark on her face. His hand lowered. He didn't ask what happened. He didn't ask if she was all right. He just watched her. Long enough to understand. Then he walked inside. Lena followed him into the kitchen. He poured 2 glasses of water, set them on the table. From a drawer, he pulled an old photograph, creased, sun-faded. In it, Lena, 6 years old, beaming beside him in ill-fitting GI. Both of them smiling in front of a dusty tournament banner. He slid it across the table. She stared at it. And finally whispered. They laughed. Then, quieter, "And he hit me." Chuck looked at her. His voice was even. "Different," he said. "I was always threatened first." He stood, crossed to another drawer, and retrieved something wrapped in soft cloth. He unfolded it gently. An old black belt, creased, worn, silent. He didn't hand it to her. Just set it on the table beside the photo. "You're not here to prove anything," he said. "But you should know how to stand when the floor disappears." She met his eyes. "We start again," he said. She nodded. He poured more water. Tomorrow would begin differently. The next morning, Lena stood barefoot on the lawn. The dew soaked through the cotton of her GI pants as she faced the open stretch of grass behind her grandfather's house. It wasn't a dojo. No mirrors, no padded floors. Just open sky and land that breathed slowly under her toes. Chuck stood across from her, hands behind his back, spine straight. His GI top was open over a dark shirt, but his black belt hung tight around his waist with effortless familiarity. The sun had barely cleared the horizon, but sweat already darkened the collar. "Begin," he said. "No bow. No warm-up. Just a single word." Lena inhaled, centered her weight, and moved. The kata unfolded like a story she'd forgotten she knew. Her arms swept with purpose, her footwork exact. It wasn't for performance, there was no audience here. Just movement. Just breath. Chuck watched without a word. Only when she finished did he speak. Again. She did. Again. And again. The 4th time, her shoulder dropped too soon. He stepped in, adjusted her elbow silently, and stepped back. Again. By mid-morning, her muscles ached. Her breath came short. But she didn't stop. Not because she wanted praise, she already knew none would come. But because something about the silence was healing. Every punch cleared a thought. Every stance burned away a doubt. Chuck called for a break. She dropped to the porch step, water bottle in hand, heart pounding. He stayed standing. "Why did you tell them?" he asked. She looked up. "Because it's true." He nodded. "It is. They didn't believe me." "That's not your problem." "I didn't want to be special," she said. I didn't want to hide it." He stepped toward the porch and sat beside her, boots heavy on the wood. "I've spent most of my life with people making up stories about me," he said. "Some good. Some ridiculous." She almost smiled. "But none of those stories mattered," he continued, "until I saw one reflected in someone else's eyes. That's when I knew I had to be the man they believed in." He looked at her directly. "You don't need to explain who you are. But you do need to decide what kind of truth you're willing to live up to." Lena took a sip of water, thinking. "Are you saying it's my responsibility?" "No," Chuck said. "I'm saying it's your legacy." That evening, they trained again. This time, he introduced what he called the 3. The foundational forms. Not taught in most schools. Not for competition, he said. For real life. They weren't flashy. No spinning kicks. No high leaps. But they required balance. Calm. Control. Show me the first one, he said. She did. Halfway through, her footing slipped. He stopped her with a raised hand. Again. In the dark, she sat with ice on her ankle. He handed her a folded towel and a bowl of rice. No trophies, she muttered. Nothing to dust, he replied. She grinned through the pain. I want to go back, she said quietly. To the dojo. Chuck didn't answer at first. I don't mean for revenge, she added. I just want to stand there without looking down. He nodded once. Then we go together. Word traveled faster than either of them expected. By the time they walked through the doors of McCann's school 3 days later, the room was full. Not just students, parents, staff, even a local news guy with a phone on a tripod. Lena stood at her full height, chin level, steps sure. Chuck followed behind her like a quiet shadow. McCann came out from the office wearing his GI, arms crossed. His smirk was practiced, but his eyes told another story. I suppose we're doing this in front of a crowd? Chuck asked calmly. You're the one who brought backup, McCann said. Chuck smiled. She's not my backup. McCann looked at Lena. Come to file a complaint? She said nothing. Or maybe a performance. Chuck stepped forward. She came to stand. A pause. Then McCann squared his shoulders. You want to show off an old man's forms? Be my guest. Chuck looked at him. No. You are. What? You're going to show us how much you've learned from the power you were given. McCann scoffed. You want to spar? Chuck removed his jacket. Underneath, his GI top sat clean, faded at the seams. He tied his belt slowly, methodically. Not for show. Just how he'd done it his whole life. McCann looked around at the phones, the crowd, the girl. Fine, he said. 3 points. Light contact. Chuck stepped onto the mat. I don't fight for points, he said. I fight to remind people. The mat fell silent. Even the squeak of bare feet stilled as Chuck Norris took his place. He didn't stretch. Didn't bounce or shift. He stood like a man who'd been here before, many times, and never had to prove it. McCann did stretch. Rolled his neck. Bounced on the balls of his feet like a showman warming up for a routine. He was younger, faster, maybe stronger, but he wasn't quieter. And in this moment, quiet carried weight. A voice called out from the sideline, probably a parent, "Is this legal?" Chuck didn't answer. McCann grinned. The instructor raised his hands. Ready? Chuck gave a slight nod. McCann snapped into stance. Begin. McCann moved first, fast. A spinning low kick aimed at the knee. Chuck shifted just enough to let it pass. No counter. Just a sidestep and a glance. McCann came again, jab, cross, heel sweep. Sharp. Trained. Efficient. Chuck blocked the jab. Dodged the cross. Took the sweep, but didn't fall. He pivoted with it, flowed backward, and landed square. Still balanced. Still silent. The crowd murmured. Lena watched from the edge. Her arms were crossed, but her fists were clenched inside the sleeves of her GI. She'd never seen her grandfather move like this. Not in person. Not without memory softening the edges. McCann grew impatient. He advanced hard, flurry of strikes, back kick, then a high punch aimed at the jaw. This time, Chuck moved. He didn't strike. He redirected, caught the wrist mid-swing, rotated McCann's arm in a circle, and used the man's own momentum to spin him off balance. McCann stumbled. Chuck waited. The fight reset. But something had changed. Now the audience leaned forward. Now McCann didn't smile. Third round. McCann came in slower. More measured. He feinted high, then swept low again. Chuck didn't move this time. He absorbed. The kick hit, but not where McKin intended. Chuck took it at the meat of the thigh, shifted his weight, and stepped into McCann's guard. Then came the only strike of the match. A single palm, placed gently, almost kindly, on McCann's chest. A push. Not violent. Not dramatic. But timed perfectly. McCann hit the mat flat on his back. The room exhaled. Chuck stood still. No pose. No bow. Just presence. McCann sat up, blinking. Chuck extended a hand. McCann looked at it. Then turned away and stood up on his own. He walked off the mat. Chuck looked to the room, at the students, the parents, the teacher who'd just been humbled. He said nothing. Then he turned to Lena. "Now," he said, "it's your turn." Lena stepped onto the mat. The dojo that had once laughed at her was silent now. She bowed. Then moved. Her kata flowed like ink across water. Every block, strike, and stance was both crisp and graceful. She didn't rush. Didn't show off. She just told the truth, with her body, with her breath. When she finished, she stood still. 1 beat. 2. Then someone clapped. It was a slow, sure clap, from the back row. An older man with a veteran's cap. Then another joined. And another. Until the room was echoing with quiet respect. Lena bowed again and stepped off the mat. That evening, a video went online. Not shot by Chuck. Not edited or explained. Just raw footage from a student's phone. It showed the entire fight. The kata. The hand extended. The hand refused. By morning, the views were past 10,000. By nightfall, it was over 50. But Lena didn't check the numbers. She sat at the kitchen table, eating noodles, still barefoot from training. Chuck handed her a folded towel for her wrist. She'd twisted it mid-form but hadn't said anything. He noticed. She wrapped it slowly. "You embarrassed him," she said. "No," Chuck replied. "He embarrassed himself. I just reminded him. What if he still doesn't learn?" Chuck leaned back in his chair. "Then I didn't do it for him." Lena looked at him. "Then who?" Chuck nodded toward her. "For you." The days that followed moved gently. The dojo didn't close. McCann didn't resign. But something in the walls had shifted. His voice wasn't quite as sharp anymore. His posture, still proud, held a little more tension. He stopped correcting students mid-kata to belittle them. Stopped interrupting. He didn't thank Chuck. But he didn't hit anyone again either. The story spread, not as a viral headline, but as a quiet ripple. People shared it in group texts, forwarded the video to friends with the note, "Watch till the end." No captions. Just curiosity. And slowly, truth replaced mockery. The laughter stopped. The whispers turned. Lena noticed. A girl from the dojo messaged her. "I didn't believe you before. But I was wrong. You're the real deal." An older man emailed. "Your grandfather taught me once. In a parking lot in '88. I never forgot." Even McCann posted a statement, not an apology, not exactly, but something close enough for those who needed closure. But Lena didn't need it. Not anymore. She had learned the rarest thing, how to stand without shouting, how to move through the world like it couldn't bend her unless she let it. And in the park behind her grandfather's home, she began teaching 3 kids from the neighborhood. One was 8. One had asthma. One had trouble making eye contact. They trained barefoot in the grass, just like she had. No belts. No trophies. Just movement. Just breath. Just space to grow. Chuck watched from the porch, sipping black coffee, boots resting on the rail. He didn't instruct. He didn't correct. He just watched. Occasionally, Lena would glance his way, not for permission, but affirmation. And she always found it. One afternoon, After the kids had gone home and the crickets had begun tuning their wings for evening, Lena stepped onto the porch carrying the old belt. His belt. The one he hadn't worn since the day of the match. She offered it in both hands. "I'm not asking for it," she said. "But I want you to know. I'm ready. If you ever want to pass it on." Chuck looked at the belt. Took it gently in his hands. Felt the weight of it, not just the cotton, but the years folded into its fibers. Then he handed it back. "You already were." She blinked, surprised. He smiled, barely. "Belts don't make teachers," he said. "Being watched does." She nodded, her throat tight. And for the first time in a long time, Chuck stood. He reached out. Not with a technique. Not with a correction. With an embrace. One arm, steady and sure. She stepped into it without hesitation. That night, a storm rolled in. Chuck sat near the open window while thunder curled in the distance. Rain tapped the roof like memory. Lena read by the fire, an old book about kata history, annotated by hand. She glanced at him. "You still think people listen to action more than words?" He nodded. "Always." She smiled. "Then I hope they were watching." The wind stirred the curtains. Outside, the dojo lights had long gone dark. But in the little house on the hill, legacy breathed on quietly. Not through titles. Not through medals. But through choice. Through kindness. Through stillness that didn't need to explain itself. And a girl who once walked home in silence now taught others how to stand.